to Hope for Your Pelvic Floor, the podcast where we challenge the limits placed on women's bodies and lives. And I'm Claire Sparrow, and I believe that when we reclaim our pelvic health, we reclaim our power. This is your space for optimism, possibility, and practical steps to move from feeling helpless to hopeful. Each week, we'll break down the myths, share tangible tools, and have real conversations about how you can strengthen not just your body, but your confidence and your future. Because you're not meant to settle, you're meant to thrive. So if you're ready to take ownership of your health, your choices, and your life, let's get started. So this episode is entitled From Villain to Ally, Rewriting the Story of Your Pelvic Floor. I often talk about this sort of analogy almost of a story and your pelvic floor being one of the characters in this story and not the only one. And I like to say, if you think, so for example, if you think right now of a story, any story, there's always a villain or two or three in any good story. But what is it that actually makes them a villain? It's because they do the wrong thing at the wrong time. They're not inherently bad. I mean, I don't watch horror or super scary films or things like that, so maybe, I don't know. But I'd like to think that, and I think this in life, that people sometimes do the wrong thing at the wrong time. And the same thing is true in your body. So what about those stories where the villain is just kind of misguided? They've somehow got off track, and really they just need to be taught to do the right thing at the right time. And this is so true for your pelvic floor and all its many teammates. It has so many friends in the story. And for some of the friends, they kind of fall out because they've been misguided. Let's just use that same analogy. They've been misguided. But in the story of your pelvic floor, there genuinely are lots and lots of friends, but they've fallen out, they've been misguided, and so they're not working in that community spirit, they're not working together, they're not being used the way that they are designed to be used. And so those misguided muscles, those misguided areas, really just need to be brought back, kind of, that idea of back onto the straight and narrow. They need to be brought back in line. They need to be reminded of their role. I often say, like, there's bossy muscles, there's bossy, those villains in the story that are just super aggressive and really bossy, and they try and take over. And we do have some muscles like that around the pelvis that become really dominating and domineering over your pelvic floor, which actually means that your pelvic floor doesn't even get a chance to work properly, to be responsive. I've talked a lot before in the podcast about the importance of the neuromuscular coordination, the ability of your brain and your pelvic floor to feel each other and be in communication. And that's a huge and important part of it. And also this piece is massive too, because if your pelvic floor is just being pulled from pillar to post by different bossy, misguided villains around and about it, it's going to struggle to have that communication with your brain. It's going to struggle to do its job, its role in the story of your pelvic floor health and function. So to get a little bit more specific about, this idea of the villains, but who are the villains in the story? There's quite a few, and I'll just actually go with misguided because villain just feels a bit harsh. So who are the misguided muscles in the story of your pelvic floor function? Well, you won't probably be surprised because I have been known to talk about this a little bit before, and it is your glutes. Those bottom muscles. There's layers of them and they're around the side and back of your pelvis. And these muscles, okay, so here, I guess if you think about a situation where you maybe find yourself accidentally clenching. Hands up. No, not really, but hands up. Who's found themselves in that situation of going, oh, hang on, I'm clenching my bum for no reason. Or you find yourself just slightly tucked, you're kind of slumped under, or you sit for a long time and you know you sit into that bucket chair, that tilted pelvis. Or another good one is you find yourself kind of leaning. Maybe you're doing the dishes and you find yourself leaning into the kitchen counter, or maybe you find yourself standing for a long time and you're leaning into one side. These are all scenarios where you're going to find that your glutes are being a bit misguided. Your glutes are doing more work than they really need to, and they're not working in a balanced way with the other muscles, including your pelvic floor, your pelvic diaphragm, in your pelvis and around your pelvis. So your glutes can become really dominant, really overpowering in the story of your pelvic floor function. So then another area close but underneath your glutes are those deep hip muscles. So there's some different deep hip muscles in there. And if you experience anything like groin pain or deep hip pain, or even if you have incontinence, this could be because of those deep hip muscles overworking, being dominant, being misguided. One of the analogies I absolutely love, if you've read the book Hope for Your Pelvic Floor, then I use this analogy there. I use it in the pelvic health membership. I teach people all the time because I think it's a really accessible image that your pelvic floor, or let's start with the deep hip muscles. Your deep hip muscles are like tie backs on big luxurious curtains, and your pelvic floor is the luxurious curtains. Now, if you try to close your big luxurious curtains to a cough, a sneeze, or to go for a long walk, and you did not remove those tie backs, it would make it really difficult for those pelvic floor muscles to close, for the curtains to close. If you have that pulling tension constantly pulling on your pelvic floor, it's going to get exhausted. It's not going to be able to respond when you're needing to cough or sneeze, or like you say, if you go on a long walk and you've got that constant pulling from those deep hip muscles, you might find yourself dribbling, leaking, or having a big gush because your pelvic floor, the curtains, can't maintain the connection that they're meant to for that type of activity. Often, this is mind-blowing and huge for people. The idea that your incontinence is not actually due to weak pelvic floor muscles. More often than not, in most of the cases, in fact, of the women that I've worked with, it's not a weakness that's prevented those pelvic floor muscles from doing their job and you from experiencing incontinence. It's literally because we've got some misguided muscles nearby that are overworking and pulling on the pelvic floor. Okay, I get quite irate and I get giddy about that one because it's huge and it's actually mega simple to solve that. And we'll talk about some different ways that you can introduce movements into your everyday life to help you to actually reduce that. So then another thing is the misguided hamstrings. Okay, so sometimes people come to me and they'll say, oh, I really feel like my hamstrings are very tight, or I feel like the middle of the hamstrings really working very hard when I do things. The same is true with the inner thighs, the same is true with the lower leg, the calf muscles. When you feel the deep kind of center bit of a muscle, and we're talking specifically here about the hamstrings, those muscles that go down the back of your legs, they're actually attached to the bottom of your pelvis at your sitting bones, and they are pulling, they are tugging on your pelvis. What else attaches to your sitting bones? Your pelvic floor muscles, that's right. So if your hamstrings are pulling, they're pulling on your pelvis and making it into, well, again, it's more of that tucky position, the tucked under, working with your glutes often to do that, to pull you under. So it's pulling on your pelvis, it's creating an imbalance in the dynamic alignment of your pelvis, and it's pulling on the back of your pelvic floor. How do you think that's going to work when you maybe have a prolapse? Perhaps you've got a rectocele or a rectal prolapse where you've either got the rectum bulging into the vagina or the rectum bulging out of your anus. And then you've got other muscles pulling down. This is not going to be helpful. Those misguided hamstrings need to lengthen up. Those misguided hamstrings need to be able to move more so that the organ of your rectum can move back up again. Isn't that mind-blowing to think that muscles on your legs that we think of and orientate to our legs could be making your prolapse worse? Just because they're misguided. They are not working in a balanced way with the rest of your body. Okay, one more. There is so many things, but I've picked the misguided areas that I think will be most relevant to you. So even your six pack can be an issue because it weaves into the front of your pelvis. We talked about the hamstrings at the back. Well, your so-called six pack, it's not really a six pack, it's at least an eight pack. And if you're seeing that whole six pack thing, it's not necessarily a good thing. It's not terribly functional. It means that those are misguided, bossy, dominant, domineering muscles. And actually, that can be making a big impact on your pelvic floor because it's pulling you down, bringing your head forward, misaligning your ribs over your pelvis, which can prevent your diaphragm from moving. So it can reduce the relationship of your breath with your pelvic diaphragm, your pelvic floor, which means that it cannot be as spontaneous. It can be pulling on the front of your pelvic floor. So let's think like we did about the hamstrings. If you've got an anterior prolapse, so if you're feeling any bulging, so if you've got the uterus or you've got your bladder prolapsing, that's going to potentially be made worse by overworking ab muscles. So when you work, you go to the gym and you get on the little ab curler or you do some exercises on those machines where you pull your body to your legs or your legs to your body, you could be unintentionally making those muscles even more dominant and more misguided. Shocking, isn't it shocking? And I want to pause at this moment to invite you to give yourself a bit of grace, because as I say these things, you might be going, well, that's me. I'm doing that. I do that all the time. You're doing your very best all the time with the information that you have, with the world, with the environment that you live in. You might have to sit for 8 hours a day at a desk, and that could be aggravating. We did an episode on this about your workplace. And that could be aggravating these symptoms and making the muscles more misguided. but you are living your life. You are doing the best you can. We're all always doing the best we can with the information that we have at the time. And now, with a little bit of new or different information, it gives you an opportunity to think about things differently, move about your everyday life a little bit differently. Okay, so please, 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 please give yourself a little bit of grace. This is one of the things that actually I still work on, is a little bit of grace, because the world that we live in is not helping us, and the bias out there in the world around your pelvic floor is weak, so just download the Squeezy app and then it'll all be fine. That dominant message is just so outdated and not helpful, and we need to reframe all of that. And that's what we're going to do next. These redeeming, how do we redeem these misguided muscles, the villains in the story of your pelvic health? Because there's no bad friends in the body, there's no bad characters. It's just that they're doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. And this is literally what whole body pelvic health is, because in the whole body pelvic health method, we restore balance back. And it, in turn, it allows those muscles to have a positive role in the story of your pelvic floor function. It allows them to work in coordination and in a balanced way, where they don't need to bully and be domineering. They just need to do the right amount at the right time. So where do we even start? Where do you start with this? Well, really, it actually begins with mindset. And this is the first thing, in fact, with whole body pelvic health. And I teach the mentees that become master teachers in the method that we have to support ourselves. We need to support you with mindset, understanding, and truly committing and believing that your pelvic floor is not a villain either, that it does not work alone. It is not expected to do everything, that it is part of a team. This is a collaborative story. It's a story of community. It's a story of bringing together all of the muscles around the pelvis and teaching them their role, the importance of their role in support of your pelvic floor. That's such an important reframe, such an important mindset shift, that your pelvic floor is not weak, it does not work alone, it is not a villain, and neither are all the other muscles. They're just misguided, and they need to come together and work in balance, in unity, and in community with your pelvic floor. And then the second thing would be awareness, like literally just noticing. And because you've listened today, because I've mentioned some of these things, you'll be so much more aware. You will notice when you're gripping, when you're tucking, when you're clenching, when you're overusing. You might even find that, maybe you lie down in bed at night and you might notice that you're clenching your abdomen. Just letting that go is huge. And then re-educate. Re-educate through movement, through breath, through coordination. Exactly what we do in whole body pelvic health. So introducing a little bit more movement into those areas of your body that are being overworking, that are being dominant. Using your breath and re-coordinating your breath with your pelvic floor. And I did promise that I would give you an example of something you can do for those, for your glutes, for your deep hips, for your hamstrings as well to a certain degree. And one of the exercises that's super simple and super easy to do is when you're sitting, wherever you're sitting, it could be on the sofa, sitting on the edge of the sofa, it could be sitting on your desk, chair, wherever you might be sitting. I actually invite some people because when you're a mummy and you've got little kids, sometimes the only minute you have is when you go to the loo and you might get that peace and quiet. I know you're laughing because even that is rare, but you might get a few moments where you get peace and quiet in the loo. And if you've got a bath, what I suggest is just sitting on the edge of the bath. It's a great height. It means that you're perched rather than sitting into a slump position. And all you do is cross one leg over the other in a number 4 sign. Sometimes I say it's like you're man crossing your legs. So they're really open rather than lady crossing where your thighs are closed and touching. You really open your leg. For some of you, just sitting there with your leg crossed and your back upright, you're going to feel a release and a bit of stretch sensation, not too much, but a little bit into the back of your hip. And that's going to be enough. And you're just going to breathe there. And then if you don't really feel like it's that difficult to be there, it's quite easy to sit in that position, you can just lean forwards a little bit. So you take your body forwards, not rounding or slumping, you keep your back straight, you just move your pelvis forward, and that will increase the sensation of releasing. And again, just holding it and breathing. You're going to breathe there for 5, maximum of 10 breaths in that position. So that's an example of what you can do as a practical exercise. One of the other elements is working with your body. And this comes a little bit into your mindset and awareness, is working with your body rather than forcing it. Oftentimes we think, we need to work hard, we need to feel the burn, we need to do this. And actually, a lot of those sensations that we've been trained to feel it are actually systems in the body of resistance where we're actually pushing too far too fast and we need to go a little bit more gently. That's why I said with the crossed leg little release is that you want to feel a little, not a lot. And then just finally, gentle, consistent practice is how these misguided muscles become great allies again. It's not an overnight quick fix, do this one thing and magically everything will be back in balance. It's understanding that you need to be consistent. We did an episode about compounding interest. That's this exact same thing. You need to do this over a long period of time to get these misguided muscles to become really excellent allies in the story of your pelvic floor function. Oh my gosh, I've been so excited about sharing this episode. I really, really hope that by sharing this, you understand a lot more about why I harp on so much about whole body pelvic health, why my method is called the whole body pelvic health method and not the pelvic floor method, because everything in our body works together. Everything is feeding through your pelvic floor. It is not working in isolation ever. So to work it in isolation to retrain its function just makes no sense whatsoever. So it's not about fixing or fighting your body. It's about understanding your story. So where is the imbalance in your story? Where are the characters needing rebalancing? Where are those muscles misguided and needing a new direction? This is what you can do. That's what this is about. And it's not about perfection. It's about balance and connection. So I hope you found this episode really helpful. Please, please tune in to the other episodes if this has been interesting. There are so many more episodes to tap into. And share with a friend if you feel like there's something that a friend of yours would benefit from hearing. And of course, it helps us to get this message out here and reach more women. If you share the episode, review the episode, save it, and do all of those things, subscribing, it does make the world of difference, because I am a solo voice. I am doing this to get the message out there so women don't need to suffer in silence or experience things in their body assuming that that's just what they have to do, because there's so much that can be done in the healing journey of your pelvic health. And I want to share that with as many women as I can. It's been great to be here and speak to you today, and I will look forward to speaking to you in our next episode. Bye for now.